I'm the devil's candy!
There was good, there was bad, there was ugly. It's a look back at the week of March 16th, 2011.
Hey folks, how you doing? Comic Book Man here. Welcome once again to my video outhouse. It's time for Week in Review, and this is the ship shape side of Week in Review. This is where we go over all of this week's shipping, some of the highlights, some of the lowlights, and we also have a second part to this show, and that is Shop Talk. Shop Talk Week in Review for this week, though, will be done at C2E2. This is C2E2 weekend here in Chicago, and I tell you, it was a great con. We're going to go there in a few minutes after we get done here, so stick around for that. But we had comics that shipped this week. As a matter of fact, we had 131 new comics that shipped this week. It was a fairly good-sized week. 26 of those books were Marvel comics, and we're going to start right off with Marvels. And the book of the week here at the store was Book of the Skull, Fear Itself Prologue. This is the, as I said, prologue to the whole Fear Itself storyline. This is not the first issue of Fear Itself, but is a prologue to it. It actually is quite important to pick up because it sets up why Sin, Red Skull's daughter, is doing all the stuff she does. Written by Ed Brubaker, drawn by Scott Eaton. Sin is busy trying to retrieve her father's book from World War II, a book of spells and incantations, which he used, and in order to use this book, he had to slaughter a bunch of Atlanteans in a ceremony, and lightning crackled across the sky, and a hammer and something else landed to Earth, which I'm not going to talk about, and to fight them was Captain America, Bucky, who's looking much older now, I don't know why, but a much older looking Bucky, and Namor. No Human Torch, which is kind of surprising because the Human Torch was the third corner of the Invaders Triangle in World War II, but there's no Torch in this. No Toro either, just Submariner and Captain America. Anyway, like I said, Bucky's looking older, the skull summons gods, and there's a framing sequence at the beginning of this which has Sin and Baron Zemo going to look for Sin's father's artifact, and then they go to a flashback World War II, and then they come back to the present. But anyway, this was actually a pretty good read. I enjoyed it a lot, and it looks like it's a good prologue to the upcoming series. Also this week, he got a new costume! Amazing Spider-Man, number... what is this? Number... oh, I'm sorry. I really should write that down. 656. I'm sorry, 656. Written by Dan Slott, drawn by Marcos Martin. No One Dies Part 2, Resolve. This is the second part of the two-part story that's going on with Spider-Man. The reason I'm talking about this, usually I skip over second parts, is this was quite good. This is highlighting the importance of Peter Parker's spider sense. It's gone from him now. It's missing. It's been wiped out of his body. And while he still has all of his other spider powers, the spider sense is turning out to be much more important than he ever thought it would be. Anyway, this sets up J. Jonah Jameson and Spidey being on opposite sides of an issue. The issue is, what do you do with a bad guy who kills people and leaves all this emotional wreckage behind? J. Jonah Jameson's attitude is, kill him and let God sort him out. Spidey's attitude is, no one dies ever again. I'm here to stop that no matter what. And of course, now they're on opposite poles again, fighting one another, Jonah and Spidey. This is the debut of the new Spider armor, and actually, it's not all that bad looking. I could care less about spider armor. I remember when Web of Spider-Man, I think it was 100, when they introduced the last major spider armor that they did, and it was kind of dopey looking. But this actually works pretty well within the confines of the story. Spidey has sort of recasted the Superman savior role in this thing, and like I said, the theme of this book is nobody dies, and Spidey will do whatever it takes to make sure that nobody dies, including the bad guy. So you should pick this up. This is a good read. Also, in the X universe, we had 3 books that shipped this week. Oh, we had the first part of Escape from the Negative Zone, which is a 3-part crossing over into 3 different annual storyline. The next part 2, is going to be in Steve Rogers' Super Soldier annual. That's right, they're doing an annual for the miniseries that was out last year. This is written by James Asmus and drawn by Nick Bradshaw. The art in this is kind of quirky. It was very reminiscent of Superhero Squad, to be honest with you. Much more detailed, though, and much more adult in the storytelling. But it had I thought it had very strong elements of Superhero Squad, which is kind of odd, which I actually liked. X-Men get sucked into the negative zone by mistake, and they have to fight their way out. Big surprise there. Namor does the bulk of the heavy lifting in this story, not only in terms of the fighting, but also in terms of the characterization. And like I said, it is an interesting art. Look for part 2 in Steve Rogers' Super Soldier. Also this week, we had Angel and Iceman. This is a rated A book. It's written by Brian Clevenger and Juan Doe. not John Doe, Juan Doe, who was the artist in the book. Behold, Gloom, Thing from the Planet X. That's right, one of Marvel's 50s monsters comes out, and Iceman and Angel have to fight him. This is a contemporary story with the current team. It's an entry-level book, however. If you're not familiar with Iceman or Angel, this is the book for you. This is a book that's got written all over it. We have an X-Men movie coming out, and how do we introduce people to these characters who've never seen them before and slap into a trade that they can pick up at Borders or at Alternate Reality? If you look up the word piffle in the dictionary, this is what you'll see. This story is a piffle, which is not to say it's terrible, but you will be able to live quite well without it if you never read this book. What this book is good for, it's not quite, it's almost a kid's book. This is in the same mold as the Thor book that was out for 8 issues this past year, which was part of the kids line, which was canceled because it really wasn't a kids book, but it was written for the kids line. It has a much simpler storytelling style to it, but it is very deep in Marvel continuity, and it's written more for a 40 to 50-year-old fan looking back and going, ah, than it is for a little kid, so it's not really a kid's book. The art, I didn't like at first, but it grew on me as I went through the story, and by the time you got to the end of it, I actually appreciated the art. Didn't like it first couple of pages, so if you pick it up and you don't like the art initially, give it a chance. Also this week, we had 2 .1 issues, X-Force, Uncanny X-Force, and Hulk, number 30.1, and this is 5.1 over here for X-Force. These are both specials, these are both annuals, these are both fill-in stories, these are both jumping on points, these are however you want to call them. This, Sweet Dan Sweet loves X-Force, so I'm going to assume this is great. I started flipping through it and I got a headache. I don't really care all that much for X-Force. Hulk, though, this was pretty good. Jeff Parker wrote it. Gabriel Hardman drew it, and Tom Palmer was the inker on the book. Tom Palmer! That's right, the Tom Palmer. Title of the story is The Whale, and this whole book is all about drawing the parallel between Thunderbolt Ross, who is now the Red Hulk, once upon a time being Ahab, and the Hulk being his whale. And in this book, you have a flip. Thunderbolt Ross, who is now the Red Hulk, is now the whale, and he has his own Ahab, and his name is Reginald Fordian. It's the Red Hulk's new Ross. Ross finally figures out the connection between the two. The question I have always had with this character, ever since they revealed him to be Thunderbolt Ross, and he changes back into Ross in this thing, and then back into the Red Hulk, where does the mustache go? This bothers the hell out of me. It really does. Where does the mustache go? When he's the Red Hulk, it disappears. When he turns back to Thunderbolt Ross, there he is. He's got this full bristle brush mustache sitting there.
It should bother you more that all he ever loses he never loses his pants.
Well, he never loses his pants, but I can live with that because
Yeah, well,
because you know you can't have the Hulk running around with his schlong hanging out. I
doesn't
can live
make
with
any
that,
sense.
but the mustache just doesn't disappear unless you shave it.
Yeah, but why the pants? Why not his socks? His socks would grow with his feet.
Oh, they just split off. Anyway, in the end of the story, he's got some bugs in his brain, which you'll have to read to find out what I'm talking about. There's bugs in his brain, which is going to hinder his future changes. I'm sure they'll get around that at some point. This wasn't a bad for .1 story. Also this week from Marvel Heavy this week, Young Avengers, Children's Crusade Special. It has no title. The book has no title. It's just it. Written by Alan Heinberg, art by Alan Davis. Alan Davis, I love Alan Davis. Beautiful art in this thing. This is essentially a fill-in issue. This could have been a .1 issue for all it does in the book. It's setting up how Iron Land will eventually turn into Kang, which seems to be the recurring theme for every damn issue of the book. You're going to turn into Kang someday! Okay. This is essentially a continuity implant story where you have the Young Avengers fighting Electro just before the events of New Avengers #1. It's very beautiful art and a very pointless story, but it's a well-written pointless story, and this is a book intended for Young Avengers fans only. Also this week from Marvel, we had Crossbones. This is another one of the Captain America specials that are out, written by William Harms, drawn by Delclaire Shelby. I know I got that name wrong. USA Superhero is the title of the story, which is very important to the actual story itself. Hey kids, I'm a USA Superhero. Why is that important? Crossbones gets sent to Eastern Europe. Yeah, I know he's in jail. Well, the government comes in, they grab him, they say, we have a mission for you that heroes can't do, but since you're a bad guy and you're a real dick, you can do it. They send him to Eastern Europe to retrieve a kid who is immune to the bite of a werewolf. And when he gets there, all the villagers say, who are you? And Crossbones says, I'm a USA Superhero. Tell me whatever the hell you want to tell me. I'll be here to protect you. Which, of course, he doesn't do. This is an ugly little book about an ugly little character. There's a lot of background on Crossbones and his various motivations in this thing, but this is a very uglily drawn book, and it's one of those dystopic stories that will leave you just not feeling good at the end of it. But if you like that kind of stuff, that Punisher type stuff, go ahead. This is it for you. And finally, our last Marvel for the week is Ruse #1. This, of course, brings Ruse back from cross-gen Limbo into the Marvel Universe, written by Mark Waid, the original series writer. Micro
That's it.
Is the artist on the book.
Very well known. Very well known.
Title of the book is Victorian Guide to Murder. Ruse and Emma Bishop are back doing their Holmes and Watson impersonation. Rat and dog fights by the lower classes just run throughout this entire book. That's the main theme of the book. Rats and dogs fighting one another in a boxed off area for the poor folks to bet on. And Emma is marked for death. If you liked Ruse, there you go. That's Marvel's for this week. DC shipped 22 books this week. This is the only one of note. Not that DC's books weren't great this week, but this is the only thing of note this week. And it's Zombie #1, The Return of Zombie from Milestone Universe, written by John Rosum and drawn by Fraser Irving. This is the 9th Stronghold Part 1, Prisoner of Industry is the title of the story. This is a wonky, wacky looking at it through a cracked mirror at the world of the zombie. This had more of a Vertigo feel than anything else to it. David Kim is zombie. He can manipulate nanobites into his body. He can turn paper into popcorn. He can do all sorts of neat stuff with it. Weird things happen all over the world, and they trickle down to him, and he has to go to the prison of industry, which is being run by Catholic Girl and none of the above. The Catholic caretakers of the prison of industry. And there's just a ton of nun jokes in this thing. None of the above, none for you,
None of your business.
None of your business is one of them. There's a ton of nun jokes in this thing. And Catholic Girl, who's a little Catholic girl, and they're the wardens of this place. And it's a mini prison that sits on a tabletop that they have all these super villains, or people with powers, I should say, who are bad folks who are locked up in it. And they all get killed off, and zombies got to figure out what's going on. That was your DC book of the week. On the indie side, ton of indies this week. Lone Ranger, The Death of Zorro, #1. This has got 3 beauteous covers. This is cover 1. This is cover 2. This is cover 3. And this is written by Andre Parks and drawn by Esteve Pauls. This is The Death of Zorro. Confederate bushwhackers attack a deserted mission populated by Indians, and Don Diego is the only one around who can save them. He shows up to save them. He fights the Confederate soldiers, and at the end of the book, he gets shot in the back. This is a 5-issue series, and he looks like he's killed at the end of the first issue, so I'm not giving anything away. They got 4 more issues to plow through with this thing. So he's probably not dead. He's going to be lingering for 4 issues with a bullet in his back, I assume. Ranger is in this thing. He shows up in the second half of the book. He's disguised as Clark Kent, mild-mannered storekeep owner. You have to buy the book to see what I'm talking about.
There was a lot of flashback in it.
But he hears about what happens to Don Diego and snaps into action with Tonto. This is great art. It has a wonderful earth tone palette in the book, and I really enjoyed reading the story a lot. You should pick it up. Antarctic Press shipped 2 books this week. Time Lincoln, written by and drawn by Fred Perry. This is a family of altered wars on drugs story. Lincoln, Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, and Einstein versus Stalin, Castro, and Khrushchev. Here's a question I have. If you're under 40, these names mean absolutely nothing to you. Who is the audience for this book? Who's supposed to be buying this book? It's sort of political, and it's sort of not. It's altered war stuff, but the audience to this thing is my age and older, who understand who all these people are. I don't understand who the audience for this book is. This book, however, I understand the audience for. Written by Joe Wright and David Hutchinson. Written and art by David Hutchinson. Planet of the Living Dead. If you saw the first 2 Aliens films, and if you saw Walking Dead, the TV series, that's what this is. The USS Typhon and crew land on a planet that's been infested with zombies. The crew get picked off one by one. The crew all has their own unique personalities, and they're betrayed at the end of the story by the guy in the crew who's a representative of the company. Where have you not heard this story and seen this ad before? It's black and white on slick paper, which does not help the art at all. Putting it on slick paper, it looks rushed and unfinished. It's not as bad as the Sarah Palin Scott Pilgrim pastiche that we talked about last week, but it has a couple of pages in it that look pretty bad. The second part of this book is coming out in March. Can't wait for it. Over at Image, 2 books I'm going to talk about real quick: Hack Slash and Bomb Queen. If you like everything that Hack Slash and Bomb Queen does, this is more of the same. The C word is used, the P word is used, the F word is used, and there's lots of blood and guts and violence.
Needs bigger breasts.
And stupidity. And my biggest complaint is the breasts just aren't big enough. This, however, everyone should pick up who has any interest at all in getting into comics. Issue number 1, script book. John Layman's full script is for the first issue is in this book. And this is peppered throughout with art by Rob Gilroy. Sketches which take you from thumbnail to finished product, and also he takes you along the way of stuff that he discarded and redid throughout the script. Like I said, this is a must for all would-be writers and artists out there. You really should pick this up if you have no idea of the form of how to write a comic or how to write a script. This is it. It's only $3.99. Night of the Living Dead from Avatar comes in 4 glorious covers. This cover, this cover, this cover, and this cover. Oh, what can you say about this? It's 1969. Yes, that's right, the time of the original Night of the Living Dead. Zombies are taking over the East Coast, but on the West Coast, they're still California dreaming. You got girls in bikinis sunbathing. You got guys in dune buggies and choppers riding around the desert, and you have a Charles Manson type character who has his own commune out in the middle of the desert, and all is wonderful except there seem to be 3 zombies tied up in the basement. I can't imagine why. Finally, finishing up. We're going to rip through the rest of the indies real quick. Spider, 2 covers from Moonstone shipped this week. Black and white with red coloring. That's right, red coloring. Inside, I haven't read it. I flipped through it. Pablo Marcos' art is about the best thing I can say about it. And it looks rushed on Pablo's part. The Guild from Dark Horse. This is another special. The Tink special. Phoenix. Number 1, this took me back to 1975 when I read the very first Phoenix. It's written by Jim Kruger, art by Brendan Dean. Resurrection is the title. Aliens abduct and kill most everyone in the town, experimenting on who will survive wearing a super suit that they put together. The aliens engineered everything to find just the best candidate for the suit. This is got terribly amateurish art in this thing. And as I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, I'm remembering the original story, and it's almost as bad as this is. They didn't do much for it. This Indie Comics Showcase is Indie Comics magazine. This is a showcase title. This has got 8-page stories in it featuring Arsenic Lullaby by Doug Paskowitz, Students of the Unusual by Terry Crow and George Calamato, Carnival by K.G. Koala, City of Lost Souls by Tim, Jeff, and Joe Vigil. That's right, the Faust Tim, Jeff, and Joe Vigil from Blue Island here in Illinois. And 4 other stories. They're all 8 pages. They're all been pushed off the racks because of what's been going on in the industry over the last couple of years with indies and their inability to find rack space. But they're in here in 8-issue story arcs. They also have their websites attached. This is very much worth picking up. $6.49. It's a very nice package showcasing some very nice books. And finally, the Comic Book Man's cover of the week. How could this not be the Comic Book Man's cover of the week? Right, when I first saw this last week, I was putting it into the kids stuff, the kids corner selections. Reggie looks absolutely psychotic in this thing. How can this not be the cover of the week? There's no other cover better than this for this week. And that's it. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm out of here. I'm going to C2E2 for some shop talk, but you can go to the store's website, check out all the other weeks in reviews we do. And the store's website, of course, is at...
This is just to keep me busy, isn't it?
Yes!
www.myialternatereality.com.
So go to the store's website, check it all out. I'm going to C2E2 and meet Bo!
The Video Outhouse is brought to you by some of the finest people willing to work for free. This is a list of some of them.